Alright, you know my struggles. You want to have a cat, but you also want to be a hardcore gamer, playing through your favourite 10-year-old game. She refuses to let me use my keyboard and insists on randomly leaning back and lying across half the keys every 10 minutes. If only I could just get rid of it, but my girlfriend insists on keeping her for sentimental reasons. I guess I could just get rid of the keyboard and only use the mouse, but then I wouldn't be able to play my games, right? Nah, spoilers. It's not impossible, and here's how I did it. So first things first, this video is not sponsored in any way. I just wanted to celebrate getting my new mouse. My old one was perfectly fine, but it only had 7 completely programmable buttons. I mean, like, what am I, a peasant? It doesn't even have RGB. Nah, I need 11 programmable buttons. Now, using this unnamed brand's mapping software, I mapped the 11 mouse buttons to regular mouse clicks and keys on my keyboard, which gave me access to the following actions. I've got the left and the right mouse buttons cleverly mapped to the left and the right mouse buttons, which let me use my magic and swords and stuff as I normally would. I've got the thumb trigger here, which lets me interact with things in the world. I've got the page back button mapped to C, which lets me auto walk, which is going to be my main way of getting around the world in this playthrough. And I've got the page forward button mapped to S, allowing me to walk backwards, giving me a bit more control over combat and stuff. The middle mouse button, when I click it in, acts as tab, which gives me the character screen and lets me see my inventory. The other random middle mouse button here acted as escape. Now this mouse has extra mappings when you push the scroll wheel to the left and to the right, which I map to Control and Alt respectively, allowing me to sneak and sprint. Then lastly, these 2 buttons off to the side here acted as Z, my shout key, and OR, the key to sheath and draw my weapon. This last one was definitely the least needed one. I mostly threw this in there because it would have really annoyed me if I couldn't put away my weapons inside cities. I could have also done without sprinting and probably crouching, but I have the keys, so I figured why not. Obviously the movement of the mouse still allows me to look around, and I can still use the scroll wheel to go from first to third person. The only action in the game I can think of that I'm not able to do is jump, because it seemed like the most situational and hopefully avoidable. I couldn't actually think of any point in the game where you actually need to jump. But with all that technical stuff out of the way, let's see how I actually did. Believe it or not, but the opening section is actually very easy to do with just a mouse, since all you can do is look around, which is the mouse's greatest ability after all. When it came to character creation, I decided I was going to do a mage build, since I could just hold flames on my enemies and walk backwards without requiring any real skill. So I went for a high elf to get the magicka boost, and when it came to finishing and naming my character, I hit my first roadblock. The name appears to default to Prisoner, so I thought I could just leave it at that and be called Prisoner for the whole run. And I think it even does this on the Switch version. But here you actually need to type something before it'll let you confirm. When I originally tried this run, I wasn't actually using my mouse's mapping software. I used Skyrim's keybindings to map the actions to my mouse's inputs. But that actually meant that I had no way of typing letters on my keyboard, so I couldn't put in a name. But with the approach that I landed on, I actually had access to the E, C, S, Z, and OR keys, so I gave myself a lovely name. But I figured this name was so serpent-like that a high elf just wouldn't do. So for that reason alone, I played as Zzz, the Argonian. And thankfully this is one of the very few times in the game when you can actually click a button on the screen with your mouse. Because if not, I would have had to sacrifice one of my very few keys for the return key purely to accept this name. From there, the intro carried on as normal. When the headsman took his swing, I looked away so I could have some plausible deniability that they just swapped the bodies and my Stormcloak friend is actually fine. We carried up the tower and Ralof gave me a simple instruction.
Jump through the roof and keep going. Jump through the roof and keep going.
I couldn't actually think of any point in the game where you actually need to jump. Thankfully though, you can just walk right out the window and you'll make it across no problem. I guess the devs didn't trust people to see the prompt in time, so they just accounted for people being bad at the game at this point. And though we had a way around that problem for now, it did make me terrified at this point that we're just going to encounter so many things that I just didn't think of beforehand, and have a mini sick in my mouth at the realization that I don't have a key that I need. The only struggle from then on was really just getting used to my convoluted key bindings. Once combat started, my plan of doing what we all did on our first playthroughs and just cast an endless stream of fire while walking backwards worked like a charm. But when it came to switching to healing, I realised that quick selection would be really useful here, to save the awkward navigation through the menus every time. I figured it would be a fair trade to get rid of my sprint key and instead use Q, the quick select button. But I then realised that I couldn't even favourite things, because you need the F key to mark something as a favourite. So to be able to use quick select, I'd need to sacrifice 2 of my buttons. So I didn't do that, and every single time I wanted to switch weapons, magic, or do anything really through the whole playthrough, I had to go the long way. When we got down to the torture, I did what I always do and killed him, regardless of what side I'm on. Because let's face it, he really deserves it. And I also got my magic outfit, which is pretty essential to the whole run. Because of my new button layout, I was more careless about inventory management than normal. I kind of liked using the thumb trigger, so I basically picked everything up, and I wound up over encumbered really quickly. I just needed to drop some stuff, and thank Talos, I chose to keep that sheath draw weapon key, because that also allows me to drop things from my inventory. Mini sick avoided. Once out of the cave, I decided to do something I've never done before, and I chose to clear out Bleak Falls Barrow before even going to Riverwood. I've always loved the fact that you can get the Dragonstone before talking to Farengar, and you get some fun extra dialogue if you do that first.
Sparrow, find it? Ah, the Dragonstone.
So I hoped that you might get some unique dialogue from the Riverwood trader by getting the Golden Claw before you even talk to him about getting it. Getting through Bleak Falls Barrow really wasn't too bad, just a lot of cowardice, backtracking and fire. The final boss was easier than expected, but I tried to be clever and fought him from the water, since he didn't seem to want to follow me in there, but that came back to bite me in many ways, since it allowed him to corner me once he did follow me in there, and it also made my fire weaker. Eventually I dealt with him and I went off to see this unique dialogue from the Riverwood trader.
You found it! There it is!
Nothing. It's the exact same dialogue. Whether the time between him giving me the quest and me giving him the claw was 3 seconds or 3 years, the dialogue is the exact same. I wasn't surprised by this, but I was kind of disappointed. Either way, before leaving, I decided to do the Sven Feindal quest just to get some quick XP, but it was night time, and I realised I don't have a button to wait. I couldn't wait until morning, so instead of doing that, I used the opportunity to kill a chicken without becoming Skyrim's most wanted. As I was leaving the town though, I saw Sven coming out of Alvor's house. Wonder what he was doing in there. But I couldn't even get back into the Riverwood Trader to complete that quest, despite it being open 2 seconds ago for the Claw quest. Weird. On my way to Whiterun, I tried to be a hero and liberate this Stormcloak captive, but after killing the Imperials he was still hostile to me, despite only having moderate burns. I was going for chaotic good, but I guess I'll just be chaotic neutral. From there I white ran up as fast as possible to get a little bit of fire on the giant, because I needed Aella to like me.
You handle yourself well.
That's not relevant to the run at all, I just want that in my life. The next part played on like any other playthrough. I thought this elf was about to knife me and I was ready to rip her throat out, and then we all went off after a dragon. I tried to make my own way there but got lost and found a raider camp I'd never seen before. I discovered that it was actually a drug den and I liberated them from their skooma, lest any child were to find it. I struggled immensely to open a simple lock, and I figured I must have gotten a contact high from killing one of these junkies, but at least they let me borrow their horse, because they were too dead to stop me. Upon reaching the destroyed tower, I realised that because you're not actually in combat yet, you can still sleep, even though there's clearly a dragon about to come and everyone around you is terrified and screaming for their lives. So I took a power nap to make sure that the battle would happen at night, purely for aesthetic reasons. You gotta have a dragon battle at night. And the soldiers and dragon were all nice enough to just wait for me to wake up, before dying. The dragon bugged out in this battle and refused to fight me here. I guess it wanted to have a heated conversation with me, so I gave him one. With all that done, I made my way back to Dragon's Reach. You can't fast travel there yet, because the Greybeards need to do their shout first. I used to think that that only ever happened once you got to Whiterun, but it's actually just a timed event. So I can just walk around for a minute and the Greybeards will shout my official title. Then I can fast travel straight there. I don't think it's a time saver at all, it probably even loses time. I just think it's a cool thing I wanted to share. As I was leaving, I saw Lydia moving towards me, and I wanted to see if I could avoid that conversation entirely. It turns out you can, and I did. I decided that I don't want to use any companions on this run, and if I let Lydia look deeply into my eyes, I knew I'd never be able to tell her no.
It's an honor to serve you.
The next worry came with the fast travelling. I wanted to fast travel to Helgen, to go the shorter route to High Hrothgar, but it was off the map, and I didn't have the keys required to move around. All I was able to do was zoom and rotate, and that was just about enough to get Helgen on the map for me. So in this playthrough I figured I might need to do some connecting flights to fast travel from one side of the map to the other. Not a blocker, just an annoyance. On the way to the steps, I found an alchemist's shack and stole literally everything they owned. This will be the first of many kleptomaniac sprees on this playthrough. At this point I remembered that I stole that horse, and I never went back for it. It's definitely dead by now. Poor girl. I started a fight I was not ready for against a frost bear, and I ran off in what I thought was the right direction. To evade its attacks, I went behind a rock and I got stuck. Someone who was able to jump could have easily gotten out of there, but here was born without these tendons in her legs, so I had to fast travel back a few locations to get out of there. I managed to avoid the bear in the right direction this time, and eventually made it up to the steps. I prayed at the first altar and immediately was overcome by a desire to murder. I'm never one to doubt God, so I did it, and then I carried on as if nothing had happened. Maybe I'm chaotic evil. The next pilgrim was less accepting of my cold-blooded murder, but she eventually realised that I was on a mission from God. Now I was diligently quick-saving all the way along this climb, so when it came to the frost troll, I really wasn't too worried about the fact that it was about to kill me. The problem was that my cat chose this moment to lean on my keyboard, managed to hit the escape key, and quick-save in the moment before the troll dealt the final blow. So this erased any other save I had on the mountain. And in fact the last save I had was from when I got stuck against that bear, because it auto-saves when you fast travel. So I had to reload that save, fast travel again, make my way back to the steps, and redo everything. And I mean everything. Murders included. And this time I put the cat out of the room to make sure that it couldn't take the blame for my inability to play this game. Up at High Hrothgar, Barry here taught me the definition of social distancing, and he gave me my most favourite shout, the run fast for a little bit shout. I'm actually going to use this so many times in the playthrough. I took the carriage to Morthal to get the horny MacGuffin, and saw the townsfolk were gathering together, clearly worried about some problem, in need of a heroic figure. So I turned and ran. They need a hero with 2 hands, not 1. After discovering the location I needed, I stole some more skooma and fast travelled back to Whiterun to offload some of my inventory. Here I discovered that you can actually pan the map with your mouse. The sick I had been holding in my mouth the last few hours could finally be swallowed. Back in Whiterun, the Alakir warriors made me angrier than normal, and they normally make me very angry. Because just as I walked in, the Dragonborn cultists started puffing their chest, so I quick-saved, ready to start killing them. Just as I initiated combat, the warriors started the most boring conversation, and I died, unable to escape the conversation. When the quick save reloaded, it landed me in the exact same state, with the conversation underway and the cultist fire being thrown at me. I managed to win eventually, in what might have been the hardest battle of this playthrough, and I walked away with slightly more powerful mage robes. So that's something at least. When I was looting the ruins, I managed to get stuck between 2 vases. Unable to jump, this would have been a game ender, but thankfully I had that new shout, allowing me to slide right out of there. I broke the one-handed sprinting world record and found Delphine's love letter. To show her how I felt about her in return, I robbed her entire life. On our way to kill a dragon, this woman seemed very afraid of dragonfire. I helped her get over that fear in the only way I know how. And then Delphine stole my kill, so I stole her life. Later on in the Thalmor embassy, yeah, I'm skipping big chunks here where really nothing interesting happens. Malborn came up with the worst lie ever.
It's just that we've run out of the Alto wine.
I mean, the wine he's talking about is right there. So I stole it right in front of him to show that he's an idiot. When I was sneaking around, I decided that Delphine's plan to gather intel was terrible. So I decided to be a good Talos worshipper and bring down the Thalmor another way. By crippling them financially, stealing everything they own. This Thalmor was the first I encountered who actually used electricity, draining my magicka. So I couldn't kill him my usual way, so I relented and slit his throat. I tried sneaking around for the most part, and got blatantly caught red-handed by the people looking for me. But for some reason they just couldn't notice me. Sadly, upon doing anything or going anywhere, they did notice me. Now this battle against like 3 measly Thalmor took literally 20 minutes to beat. I was really low on resources, shockingly bad with a sword, and I was going against an electric boy, so I really couldn't use any magic. My left hand was just twitching next to my keyboard for this whole encounter, just knowing that if I could use my keyboard and play this normally, I'd probably have the competitive edge and actually manage to beat them. But thankfully I didn't, and I eventually realised that I can kill just one of them, take the key off their body, and then run through to the escape hatch. The only problem then was the Thalmor mage on my tail and the frost troll in front of me. The troll dealt with the first problem, and I could have escaped then and there, but there was some loot to be had. So I spent the next few minutes mercilessly trying to murder this creature in its home. and I did. With all that done, I needed to find Esbern. I tried to take the shortcut here, but I didn't have any lockpicks. I don't know what I was doing differently on this run. Normally I'd be swimming in lockpicks through the whole playthrough, despite opening every single lock I saw. But for some reason here, I think I found like 3 lockpicks in the whole run, and they all broke immediately, so I just never had any. Also, the quest marker was horribly bugged in this whole area. I forgot that you had to go through the Ragged Flagon to get to Esbern, and the marker just agreed with me. So I lost a load of time aimlessly wandering around here, just trying to walk through a wall. But once I was in, those fun electric Thalmor boys were here. So I used my favourite strategy of running. Again, the quest marker was drunk, but through muscle memory alone, I managed to find Esbern's door. But before leaving, I put this poor defenceless woman out of her misery. I then put this Thalmor agent out of my misery. I did try killing all of them, but with these mages around, I was useless in combat. So I ran on through to the Ragged Flagon, absolutely leaving Esbern behind to die. Thankfully he managed to keep up with me somehow, and we hid there, hoping that Thalmor would come through and the nice folk at the Ragged Flagon would lay down their lives and die on my behalf. But that never happened, and we got away safely. Back at Delphine's sex dungeon, I stole this incredibly valuable book, just as Esbern put it on the table, which really made me giggle. The rest of his speech was just spent looking at an empty table, and I loved that. I then laughed in the face of GDPR by selling Esbern and Delphine's data to Belethor without asking their permission. As I arrived at Cartspire, a dragon saw me, and I ran away like the good dragonborn Tiber Septim would have wanted me to be. It turned out to be a good call, because he helped me to kill all the Forsworn. Well, some of them. The dragon died pretty quickly, and I managed to sneak up behind it and steal its soul and bones. Now I had it in my mind that there was this crazy huge unavoidable battle in this area, but I managed to just sneak in with no combat. Until I got in anyway, where I encountered some Briarhearts. These guys were way too much for me, so my running shoes got even more use. I had no memory of this puzzle, nor where the solution is in the room, so I used my knowledge of brute forcing binary, well, trinary, to brute force this combination. When I got to this door, my intuition ran empty. It's been a long time since I played through this part of the main quest, but I really had no memory of there being any challenge here. From watching other playthroughs recently, I was pretty sure that you're meant to cut your hand open and a doorway opens, but I couldn't interact with anything, and I began to wonder if this was some bug caused by me sliding in here without fighting anybody. I googled around and found that yes, Esbern and Delphine are meant to be in here with me. I don't know if they just didn't spawn or if I somehow skipped a quest step, but yeah, they're not here and I can't progress with the game without them being here. People online said that you can sometimes get them to pop up by leaving and coming back, but since I knew there were so many enemies behind me, backtracking really wasn't an option I wanted to do. So I used console commands, and sadly the tilde key was not mapped to my mouse, so I had to use the keyboard to do this. And I only had to do this because the game was broken. It's outside my control, so I don't count it as cheating, but feel free to dislike the video if you think I'm a coward. Anyway, after doing that little bit of conjuration magic, they spawned out of nowhere, and the quest continued. For about a minute at least, until Esbern got to the room with the wall, and just stopped. He just stopped walking. It probably didn't help that as soon as we got in there, I ran around looting Blade's armor, in the hope that I'd keep Esbern waiting, just like he kept me waiting in the previous room. But yeah, by the time I got back to him, he just wasn't moving. He was just standing on a staircase, not going anywhere. Delphine was at the wall, but she had nothing for me, and he was equally stubborn. Now this part, I'm proud to say, I did entirely with the mouse. I didn't cheat, but I definitely cheesed. Google again confirmed that this part of the quest is really buggy, and you can sometimes trick the events to happen by moving the characters where they need to be, or by like getting them angry at you and then calming them. I Fusrodad them both all around the room, but I couldn't find the trigger anywhere. They just kept standing wherever I put them. I tried attacking them as well, but I couldn't find any way to make them chill afterwards. Either way, I had to reload a save before any combat started, and I had one last hope of how to fix this. Since he got stuck walking up the stairs, I figured that if I can make him restart the walking segment, it'd fix itself. So I had to get him back to the starting door. A combination of Fusroda and backing up on Esbern with my lizard body just how he likes it, managed to get him all the way back to the start of the room, and it actually worked. The animation played through and I saved harder than I ever have before. Then I showed them both how I felt about them dicking me around like that. I then went to the Greybeards for help, who were not happy that I was working with the Blades. So as a show of bad faith, I equipped my full set of Blades armor for the rest of the conversation. I made my way up the mountain to the throat of the world, encountering a few of these little ice monsters that I used fire against, with little effect. Of course, every Pokemon master knows that fire is weak against ice. Parthenax flexed his ability to fly for no reason at all, other than the fact that the devs didn't program proper grounded movement for dragons. I went to Winterhold to get information about Elder Scrolls, and I found Berna here having a conversation with the ghost of her brother. I swear this is one of the buggiest encounters I know of. I don't think it's ever worked right for me. Either one of them is missing or they both are, and if a dragon shows up in the middle of the conversation, which almost always happens in Winterhold, their dialogue breaks completely. Anyway, I gave Urag a lap dance in return for some information, and after he got a little handsy, I tested out my parkour skills to get down to the water level, to go find Septimus Cygnus. I didn't even think you could walk down this slope, and given that Zzz here can't even jump, I'm amazed she got all the way down with only a couple broken femurs. I saw this scared dog, and despite the clear sounds of a dragon behind me, I concluded that the dog was just scared of my raw power, and I didn't turn around, because I wanted to keep that illusion in my mind. Now begins the most fun part of the entire run, navigating through Blackreach. Inside, I encountered the first robots of the run, who seemed very resistant to my fire. Pokemon has lied to me yet again. When I got to this humble little cat, and I spent 10 goddamn minutes and all the strategy I can use just to take him down, I became kinda worried for how difficult this area would be. I'm going to skip through most of this section. I find the aesthetics ugly, the opponents ugly and annoying and repetitive, and it just goes on and on. Basically, I discovered I can take down a single spider worker without taking any damage, just by hitting it with fire and walking backwards. But the Thalmor are way too strong for me, so I did basically the same thing on them, but periodically ran off to heal, wait for my magic to come back and then repeated the process. It wasn't even difficult, it was just boring. When I got to this alchemist's table, I remembered that I wanted to make this an alchemy playthrough as well. Whoops. So I made up for lost time and ate every ingredient I had. Now I had no memory of this encounter at all, but they didn't like me hitting them with fire. I genuinely don't remember what's meant to happen with them, but I had just woken a centurion, so I figured I'd run away and leave them to deal with it. They'll probably be fine. Upon Blackreaching, I figured the best way to approach this beautiful, intricately laid out area full of unique models, quests and enemies was just to run through it all without interacting with anything. I don't have time for that. I did stop to murder these few servants though, because they seemed like they'd be easy to kill, and I was right. They all died. With the Elder Scroll in hand, I returned to Parthenax, and I completely forgot that immediately led to battle with Alduin. But again, once he arrived, the battle hadn't technically started, so I was actually able to fast travel away and do some trading to prepare for the battle. I made the genius decision to sell all of my armor here, and I have genuinely no idea why I did that, but I deeply regretted it for the rest of the playthrough. And then I returned to the throat of the world with no armor. Sadly, the cool blade sword here that's super effective against dragons ran out of charge, and since I don't have a T key, I wasn't able to recharge it, so it's dead to me. I also burned through a couple of staffs in this battle that I couldn't recharge, but we eventually defeated him, and then went off to plan a peace council. Sadly, when my back was turned, Lydia managed to start a conversation with me here. But, you know, I've grown a lot since last time. I managed to tear myself away from her and go save the world. She'll love me even more after that. I broke etiquette by sitting down at the dinner table while people were still standing around me eating their finger foods. We captured a dragon who immediately stopped resisting, despite being perfectly able to breathe fire. I mean, this trap is made out of wood. Surely he could have just contorted the flame in some way to free himself. I don't know, maybe he was a turncoat all along. I went off to prepare for the final battle, but other than buying an apprentice hood and a few potions, I figured I was about as hopeless as I was ever going to be. So we set off to Skuldafn. This section was a bit like Blackreach, just kind of repetitive. I mostly ran, cowered, burned, healed, ran, etc. until the very last section where you have to kill a dragon priest to continue. I managed to get through the surrounding forces surprisingly easy, but this dragon priest was able to one-shot me, and I could barely do any damage to him. I made a decision here that I'm still not sure if I regret. I used the Storm Call shout to rain lightning down on him for a while. I think it actually took off around half of his health, but it also seemed to summon a couple of dragons, which made the battle a lot harder. And it also has such a long cooldown that I basically couldn't use shouts for the rest of the fight. This one was actually the hardest battle by far. I found what I call a coward's corner, where none of the dragons nor priest would ever follow me for some reason. which allowed me to quick save, try to land a single hit on the priest, and then run away until my magic came back. This whole fight took about 30 minutes all in, but it netted me a really cool mask, boosting my magicka and basically rendering that apprentice hood I just bought completely pointless. There were 2 more dragons to deal with, but I ignored them and jumped on right into Sovngarde. Once I got there, I accidentally accepted this soldier as my companion, and he wouldn't let me tell him that I hated him and he was ugly, so I thought I'd have to reload a save just to get rid of him. Thankfully, like 5 seconds later, Alduin swept in and killed him. He's a nice guy like that. I let Sun here feel the warmth of the sun, and when I was told to talk to these 3 heroes, nothing happened. They all just said their bit, and anytime I talked to them, they would just say their line over and over. So I just went around in a circle trying to recreate that one Bo Burnham song.
We think we know you. We think we know you. We think we know you. We think we know you.
They eventually realised there was stuff to do, so we all went out and fought Alduin. It was easy as always, just using my good old fire on him, and we all shouted at him to come clean his mess, and it was pretty uneventful. Eventually I was named the greatest hero that ever lived, and I celebrated the only way I know how. Getting naked and taking all the drugs I have. The skooma gave me confidence. Confidence I wouldn't normally have. Confidence that I needed to complete this little side quest, called Paarthurnax. When I returned to Tamriel, the dragons were celebrating, so I did the right thing and attacked their grandfather in front of them. Thankfully none of them seemed to care, but Paarthurnax seemed a little hurt emotionally. That didn't last long though, since he fell to my blade, and I looked off into the sunset, not even looking at this dying ancient dragon, whom I destroyed for no reason other than that a crazy old man asked me to. To finish things off properly, I went to Arngeir to show him all the good work I did, and I was a little disappointed by how little he was disappointed in me. I basically just killed his messiah in cold blood, and he's like, I don't like you as much as I used to like you. So I gave him and his friends permission to get real mad at me, and cemented the legacy of the drug-addled dragonborn who saved the world, naked, using only a mouse. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end if you did. This is the first of these types of videos I've made, and I'm kind of trying to reboot this channel, so any feedback or ratings would really go a long way. In conclusion, I'm really amazed how easy this playthrough was. The actual constraints of using the mouse had almost no impact on the gameplay, and I'm amazed at how easily I was able to adapt to it. I finished this run in about 10 hours of gameplay, which is apparently a third of the average time for playing through the main quest, which I was pretty amazed by. But what was most surprising to me about this playthrough was just how unfamiliar I was with the later parts of the main quest. For years I've said that this is my favourite game of all time, but I think I've only actually played the main quest all the way to the end once, maybe twice, and they were both probably in like 2012. So if nothing else, this gave me a reason to play through my favourite game's story for the first time in nearly 10 years. And having a quick look at the Skyrim page for speedrun.com, it seems that no one's actually submitted this run. I don't know what it takes to submit a new category, but maybe I'll start one. But anyway, thanks again so much for watching. If you liked it, be sure to like the video and subscribe to my channel to see and hear more of me. But for now, I'll leave you.